coming at you live from their secret location in an underwater bunker 2 miles off the Emerald Coast. It's Chimichanga Talk with your host, Deadpool Speaks. And we're back. We're back with another round of podcasting with me, your host, Deadpool Speaks. And I'm here, as always, with the incomparable and slightly sniffly Bad Juju. How you doing, Bad Juju?
Thank you. Allergies are still
And
killing
so
me.
the thing is, what's important is our guest, right, Juju? Because you talk too much, always. Now, the one thing that I want to go ahead and mention is we have a very special guest. I'm super excited for this guest.
Oh yeah.
Now, we had a title card and everything created, and unfortunately, he got sick last time. But you know what? Things happen, right? Especially in his line of business. A whole bunch of people trying to take him out all the time. You know, a lot of secret agents trying to get some of that good museum dirt. But go ahead, Juju. I'll let you introduce our next wonderful guest.
Yes, our guest this week is not only an artist, but he is a marketing director for the Exploreum Science Center in Mobile, Alabama. Alabama. He collects all sort of crazy little items, which we're gonna get into, which I'm really excited about. Please welcome Josh Holland to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, one thing I gotta ask right away: things don't come alive at night, right? In the museum, nothing happens there. Like, is there?
We have two resident supernatural staff members, for lack of better words. I have a little girl on this side of the building where I'm at, which is an old firehouse, and on the other side of the building, we got a guy that we call Jim. And they create a little bit, supernatural shenanigans here and there. But you got to figure, downtown Mobile, it's the oldest part of Mobile, built right on the water. This part used to be marshland and all that kind of stuff years ago, over 100 plus years ago. But yeah, it gets a little weird here sometimes. But the exhibits themselves and all that stuff, they're pretty low key. They're chill. But we've got a laser harp and stuff like that that's motion activated.
All right.
And yet, just randomly go off sometimes, and so talk it up to the supernatural guest, or
slightly
alive.
yeah, slightly alive. Sometimes.
So does it? So when it goes off randomly, I mean, is it like does it play like random notes, or is it like chopsticks, or what? I gotta know.
Yeah, it's pretty random. I mean, it doesn't carry its own tune necessarily. It's more like a kid playing, kind of figuring out the thing. And it's done that for years. And we've had several different types of laser exhibit pieces or whatever, and it does the same thing. It just, no one will be in the gallery, and I've been up here by myself before, and I can hear it downstairs. There's no one else in the building.
So really?
Oh God,
pretty strange. But we're all used to it. I've been here going on 13 years now, so it doesn't faze us.
Not anymore.
Yeah, the new people, it freaks out a little bit, but we're pretty used to it. So, and they seem to be. I mean, what better place if you're going to be a ghost to be in a science center and get to hang out and play with cool stuff and nobody's around? So
I mean, yeah,
lasers.
You get to like constantly be in a museum, kind of like look at what they have and play around with whatever, just not hopefully breaking it because then that blows your cover. But
yeah,
that definitely. That's a fun story to even tell the new guys when they come in for the first time. Like, that just happens. That's Stacy. She's just doing her usual walk around.
How do you prepare somebody for that? How do you even like bring that up in conversation? It's like, you'll notice we'll get to the ghost part of your training manual.
Usually we just let them figure it out on their own, and they ask about it, and it's like, oh yeah, that's so and so. That's the resident ghost here. So they just okay, and that's normal how, but yeah. Sometimes we'll bring it up and casually as best you can. But yeah, that's all we can figure out. We're a science center, so, and we have had I can't remember their name. It was before I was here, but some guys that did the supernatural like ghost hunting type thing came in the building and did some stuff too. It's on YouTube somewhere, probably 10 years ago. But yeah, so it's that the charm, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So I mean, what is it that you can say that? Well, I mean, we know what you do by your title card, obviously.
Yeah.
But describe to us, besides a curator of really cool toys and stuff for your desk, what is it that you do there?
So, a little bit of everything, man. We're a small team. We're a nonprofit, so and we're not a state or federally owned, not operated nonprofit. We operate independently. So a lot of people don't realize that. So that being the case, we do a lot with very little, like whether it's budget, staff, whatever. So um, have the fancy title, and in normal cases, you might have 10 plus people underneath you, but me, I have maybe 2 or 3 people at a time, but I work with our entire staff. We all do a lot of different things, and I do everything from designing graphic for our social, content for our social, maintaining the schedule, email blasts, designing exhibits, designing exhibit signage, researching exhibits. Even have a vinyl plotter that you can't see off screen that I do vinyl signage and stuff like that, because that was, I worked at a sign shop for a little while prior to being here. So a little bit of everything. Maintain our website, do press releases, go to different conventions and meetings and things like that, and just kind of keep our presence out there with the community and things, that nature. So it's a lot. I mean, I could ramble off 100 other things that I do and have done. I mean, if we have a big event, we're all cleaning up with brooms and stuff like that afterwards. So it's like we like to say, small but mighty. So
Yeah, that's
And
always
that's a really important part of it, I think, because
yeah,
being a nonprofit, having to do, like you said, a lot with a little, kind of really flows your creative juices. And how can I go ahead and produce something that a lot of people can enjoy in fill like a large space? Because a lot of people who haven't been there don't realize that when you have to fill a museum space, you have to account for where you're putting things, how you're creating an atmosphere,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that the public doesn't necessarily realize, and that sometimes we forget about too. Like we get certain things right. Oh, this can be massive. We get it in our space, and it's like, oh, this is kind of small. Like because you get it, the scale's a little off or whatever. So um, yeah, it's definitely always a challenge. Like can we fit? Because we've had to pass on some phenomenal exhibits that just don't fit in our space, and then we've had some amazing exhibits that we just kind of shoehorned in and made work. Like Cube exhibit was a perfect example. That we that exhibit was typically made for a bigger space, but we rearranged it in a way where it fit our space because we felt it was such an important thing for us to have. So
Yeah, so it's like
oh
it's not like a Spinal Tap situation where you're trying to get Stonehenge and they put the things into inches. I don't know if you've ever seen This Is Spinal Tap, but
yes,
yeah, when the guitarist Nigel Tufnell decides to go ahead and draw a scale of Stonehenge, and they take it and they drop it down, and it's like a couple inches high because they
yeah,
misunderstood, and he put two quotes instead of just the one for the foot.
oh yeah,
You guys have to calculate your space and figure out how to best lay it out for everybody to enjoy,
uh,
right?
yeah, absolutely. I know years ago we built this little, we call it a puppet tree. It's like a little fake tree, and it's got a little cutout where kids can climb inside of it and do a little puppet show through a little window cut in the front. And we built it outside on our loading dock because we didn't have the money to buy something like that or commission a big, exhibit company make it. So we built it on our loading dock. We took preliminary measurements, of course, but we go to bring it inside. We had to couldn't get it through our loading docks. We had to go all the way around the building, come in through our courtyard, open up the big firehouse doors, and then kind of shoehorn it into place. And it barely fit. I mean, within a half an inch. And we did that too
wow.
with a penguin exhibit years ago too. Did all the preliminary measurements and whatnot, and it got here. And when we were bringing the large aquarium for the penguins in the building, it barely cleared the door jamb by like less than a half an inch, like maybe a quarter inch. And this thing was like, I don't know, 20 feet long by like 12 to 14 feet high, something like that. And we had it craned over into the courtyard because it wouldn't even fit through
Oh wow.
the doorways. So yeah, it was insane. But so we've had a few close calls, but typically we do all right with it.
at
And
least at least it's just a few times at least. But I think every time you have it's like, oh,
really,
it's like,
we got to get a bigger space. Um,
And,
so
and we,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh no, I'm good.
No, I was going to ask you. So, like, how do you guys come up with these ideas? Like, how do you say, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and kind of focus, in on this, or we want to do an exhibit on this? Is it something that's like suggested by the community? How do you guys find your ideas for this?
Um, it's a number of different things. I mean, yeah, the community, input sometimes factors in. Again, like people not knowing that we're a nonprofit, they're like, "Why don't you get this exhibit or this film or whatever?" I'm like, "Cost is prohibitive." First and foremost, we look at is, what can we afford and what do we have space for? But no, we're always looking at other science museums, and we have a network of, I guess, design design houses, for lack of better words, companies who make and manufacture exhibits,
Mm.
and they send out emails and send out pitches, and we also meet them at conferences and things like that too. And we go around and see like little snippets of the exhibits and things like that, and we find out about them that way. And we look at, what can we afford, what fits in our building, what fits our mission statement. Is it um, like with us being preliminary or primarily STEM oriented, we try and keep it close to that, even though like Cuba was a little bit of a sidestep from that a little bit. There was still a lot of biological science in there, so we felt like it still fit our mission. And cultural sciences, obviously, or like history museums and art museums, but we felt like there was enough hard science in there, like we call it, to make that fit too. So
Mhm.
it's a number of different factors, but yeah, budget and space are the two top indicators that we start with. Because if we can't afford it, can't fit it, it's a no go. Um, and we kind of narrow it down from there. But there's tons and tons of exhibits out there, and we have a good rapport with other museums as well. So sometimes they'll reach out to us, and be like, "Hey, we're getting this. We're going to put you in touch with the owners of the exhibit." So
Gotcha.
that's
So how does that work? I mean, I'm really curious because the thing is and I know that there are houses that like specifically house these things and kind of loan them out and things of that nature. But like, how does that world work? I mean, is it like, hey, just like I guess with education, right? You have a lot of people that pitch curriculum, right?
yes.
So you have businesses that go around and say, "Hey, look, this is a textbook. You're going to get this textbook, and everybody's going to be smart." Um, you know, uh, so there's places out there. There's like little. Do you have like a warehouse catalog that comes in? It's like, hey, look at our nifty little new exhibit that you could do. Is it something like that?
It's not far off from that. It's not as cohesive, I guess. It's not like one big conglomerate necessarily. But it's a
Mhm.
bunch of small design houses and groups that and some museums actually make their own exhibits, post them, and then they tour them around the country, and they kind of recoup their expenses that way too. We're not nowhere near that size. These are like the
Mhm.
places in New York, Chicago, LA, these massive that are probably 5 times our size. They're the ones that build a lot of exhibits, then travel them around. And you've got like Stage Nine, little sticker back here on the fridge. You guys can't see it, but they're a house out in California, and they did Toytopia, they did Popnology, Animation Academy, all those exhibits we've had. Well, Popnology we haven't had yet, but other two we have.
Mm.
They're another design house. They do a lot of different exhibit design and things like that, and they operate independently. And then they shop them around. They go to conferences, and we meet up with them, and see what they have, what they got in the works, and we kind of do things like that. I mean, it's not too far from what you're talking about with like textbooks and other sales type things. So it's yeah, and some stuff we have to dig, and you might catch a glimpse of something on social media and be like, "What's that?" We got to find that. Like. So, sometimes that's how it is. We do like a reverse Google image search and try and track down what this thing is. And if it's a permanent exhibit or if it's a traveling exhibit, if it's traveling, then we figure out who, we'll email a museum or call them or whatever and find out. So, yeah,
Uh,
it's a treasure hunt sometimes.
now, now that you mention that, I am curious. So you've been in like 13 years, as you said. I am curious. You've seen a lot of things. You've run on a lot of things. What is the most like bizarre, or most notable thing you've had to like bring into the museum? Because I know you
Oh,
said it
wow.
was a bit more of a, it's an independent, but still
Yep.
there's crazy things you'll see. What is
Oh,
the most crazy for you? What was the one that
yeah.
lingers in your head the most?
we've had some absolutely bonkers stuff come in. I mean, from like being to hold like actual legit dinosaur bones,
Ooh.
fossilized eggs, meteorites, and meteorite crosscuts. We actually had years ago, NASA loaned us one of the moon rocks that's like encased in acrylic in a little pyramid.
Oh wow.
That had to be delivered by some guy with it literally handcuffed to his wrist, like an old spy movie or something like that.
That's cool.
Wow.
We've had all sorts of wild stuff like that, and we've had people who come in with like stuff they found in their backyard, and like, is this like an Egyptian relic or something? And we're like, no, man, that's a rock. So it's but yeah, those are the ones that stick out at the top of my list. The other ones would be like when we had the Genghis Khan exhibit, we had some swords and weaponry that were from 1400s, 1300s,
Mm.
and we got to see those. And depending on who owns the exhibit, they'll let us, of course, with gloves on, like hold some of the artifacts and things like that. So
Oh, that must be amazing, especially like
yeah,
an old time like sword. It's always so interesting when you get those because that sword
oh,
has a story, a big story, but we don't know it. It has a big
exactly.
story though, so that's
It,
fascinating.
that's one of my favorite parts of the job is really getting to see those things. Like not like when I go somewhere else to a different museum and see an exhibit, and I'm like looking behind the glass, like most people do. Like I'm getting to actually hold this thing that's been maybe on a battlefield,
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
on
held
the,
by
you
like
know,
thousands, most likely.
yeah, like the meteorite, getting to hold that. This thing's traveled through space, and like landed here on Earth, and of all places, landed in my hands. So
Yeah. So
it's
that
pretty wild.
The meteorite is really trying to think about its decisions. It's made its life to kind of wind up
Exactly.
here in your hands.
Yeah, it's never in a
But
million years that I think that would be the case. Getting to interact and do that stuff. It's pretty awesome. I'm very lucky to be able to do that. That's for sure.
Mhm.
and how did you kind of like land in this thing? Like, let's say, I mean, for people that are watching out there and like, you know what, I kind of want to do something like this. I mean, yeah, it's not like you talk to your camp counselor and be like, hey, how can I be marketing director at a museum? Like,
How
how
can
did
I
this
hold
happen?
swords?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and even when I started the job, I had no idea I'd be doing stuff like that. But yeah, I started off as like a lowly artist. I had a bachelor of fine arts degree. Had no clue what I was doing in college. I did well, but I just didn't know. Had no real path. And I discovered graphic design. I was like, well, I've been designing gig posters for like local bands and stuff like that when I was a teenager. Probably some unofficial version of Photoshop back in the day, because this would have been like the late '90s, early 2000s. So whatever was around back then.
Mhm.
I was like, graphic design seems like a good way to mesh my interest in art and actually be able to make a decent living. So I started off doing that, and I always tell people I got fired from my first job because I was
Mhm.
unhappy with the job because it did suck. It paid less than working at fast food, and it
Oof.
was just a terrible job. But I'm thankful for that experience because it led me to where I'm at now, and that's why I tell people I'm like, don't intentionally do that, but don't let that set you back, and don't let that be a hindrance. If you hit a hiccup like that in your career, also don't do dumb things. But had I
Of
not done
course.
dumb things and justified that, I would have been stuck at that crappy job for God knows how long. So in the long term, it was a good thing. But yeah, I started at a won't name the names of the places, but I started a place that made promo products, just literally typesetting the logos on like pens and notepads and all this stuff. That was just awful, like mundane, terrible bosses, terrible pay, and terrible hours. So after that, I worked at another sign shop briefly, and then it was similar situation. Then finally, I got a great job over in Fairhope, Alabama, at a place. It was kind of like a FedEx Kinkos, but it's like an independent owned place. But I did graphic design, did wide format printing, some vinyl work for vinyl signs and stuff like that. Did that for several years, and then I moved. I ended up going to a sign shop with a buddy of mine I went to college with. That was a great gig. We did a lot of big, large scale printing, banners, car wraps, vinyl wraps, all that kind of stuff. And so basically, my main background is in graphic design primarily, but I started picking up marketing stuff over the years, social media management, email blasts, sitting in on, phone calls and stuff like that with marketing teams of places I worked. And ultimately I started kind of, moving in that direction, but I was not really conscious of it. I was just kind of picking those up as I went along. And then, that job kind of like, it got absorbed into another company, and then things just like management kind of went sideways a little bit. So me and my friends kind of Irish goodbye our way out of there, and so it needed to change. I wasn't. I enjoyed the sign shop stuff, but it was like it just I don't know. It kind of got monotonous too. And having a creative brain, I'm sure you guys can relate to this. Like if you get too complacent, you get stuck. You get depressed. You get just burn out.
Yeah.
So anyway, they posted the job here at the Exploreum, and I was kind of apprehensive about it because I had a little imposter syndrome going on. But I had some great friends who were mentors, and they encouraged me to do it because they were in marketing, and I'd been working with them freelance over the years. So yeah, I applied here, and then they took a chance. That was 2 executive directors ago. But Don, our current executive director, he was here at the time too. He was just running education. Yeah, that's kind of what led me here. But I guess the side quest to that is like I also did a lot of music festivals. And doing social media street teams, marketing, stuff like that for Bayfest back in the day when it was around in Mobile. And then my friend Emily started South Sounds Music Festival with some partners of hers in Mobile, and then Beer Fest and a few other things, and just doing, basically freelance work with friends who had marketing firms or marketing, backgrounds. And it just all kind of came together, and, I landed here, and then, it's fast forward
What
almost 10 years later. So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
and what was like your first like real big project working there? I mean, like where you're like, hey, I landed right in my niche. Like, what was that moment?
Um, it was, I'm trying to think what specific thing it was because it was like trial by fire. As soon as I landed here, we got a Deepwater Horizon grant because it was after the BP oil spill, and I had
Hmm.
to manage a $600,000 budget. And I was like, oh my God, like I've never seen $600,000, nor do I know what to do with $600,000. Um, but yeah, I'm trying to think. Like it wasn't until the executive director that hired me, like she left, and we started doing traveling exhibits again. And I want to say it would have been. Geez, I'm going through my head because there's a catalog of like how many movies we've done in the theater and like how many exhibits we've done. But like
Hmm.
say when we had Animation Academy, which is several years in, is really when it hit home that I was like, this is this is where I want to be. Like because Animation Academy was like all the Looney Tunes, Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote, all that stuff. It is all you know the history of animation that I grew up, watching, and that's what
Yeah.
inspired me to get into art. So when we had that exhibit, actually, I'm looking at the banner on my wall that we used for the outside of the building. I saved it intentionally, and my boss hung it up in my office for me so I could keep an eye out because I just love it because it's got Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote with the dynamite stick and the exhibit date and everything. It opened on my birthday. I think it was the 4th year I was here. So it was like the best birthday present ever. I'm like, this is my job. I get to go to work and see. They had the zoetrope. They had the like original cells from some of the cartoons, like all these
That's
different
cool.
interactives, and you could do like a little stop motion section, like Gumby and stuff like that. And there was a life size statue of Gumby. I've got a picture next to. So it was that. I think that's when I was like, this is freaking cool. Like And then after that, was the guitar exhibit that we had as well. And I've always been a big music fan, even though I don't have any talent. I just grew up. My dad's a musician. Grew up listening to all kinds of music. So those 2 exhibits were like big turning points or big milestones, I guess, in terms of this is I'm in the right spot type moments.
Yeah,
Mm.
and you actually your team, right, as a group, you guys won an award because you mentioned the Genghis Khan exhibit, right? You pieced together this commercial to go ahead and kind of promote it, and it was kind of like a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, it was a really big deal, and you were something that was super proud of that. Like, how did you guys collaborate and kind of say, hey, we're going to shoot this commercial with this ancient warrior riding horseback down the street,
Yeah.
um, how did that come about?
So, yeah, of course, we got the Genghis Khan exhibit, but we're like figuring out, we actually had a good sized marketing budget to work with. I was like, I really want to do a commercial, and I'd seen some of the other little spots that other museums that hosted the exhibit had. And I was like, these are cool, but I was like, this is Mobile. Like, I'm always like, because this is my hometown. I love this place, for better or worse sometimes. But um, I wanted to showcase different parts of downtown specifically, not just us. And I was like, what if we, and of course this is like a team effort too, but like my initial concept was like, what if Genghis Khan's invading downtown? Like it lends itself to like some really cool stuff, like show some iconic, like at one scene you've got like the Sanger Theater lights in the background. One scene when the guys are shooting pool is at the little dive bar Haley's that a lot of us hang out at, and like it's shot from inside Haley's out to the street, and Khan goes by on the horse. It's
Hmm.
basically just a way to highlight Mobile as a whole because we were pitching it that way. Like, come see this international traveling exhibit that has these, performers from Mongolia. They're performing every day. Like, come see this, but also stay in Mobile and experience Mobile as a whole, not just us. So it's like a way to not just be self-serving, but serve our community. So luckily, my buddy Jeff, that I went to college with, he's a partner with Craft, or is a partner at Craft Show Digital, and we came. Him and his main partner Drew, the I guess owner, co-owner, whatever. They came in and we kind of pitched the idea to them, and then of course it snowballed from there, and the creative juices got flowing, and we get all amped up. And we're like, okay, let's do it. And um, Ghana, who's from Mongolia, he's a big part of that exhibit. His children, like I say, children, his it's his daughters in their 20s and 30s. They travel with the exhibit as performers, like doing dance and music and art in the exhibit. So he came, and he's the one that's actually Genghis Khan in the commercial, riding the horse and wearing the whole regalia and whatnot. And he's such a cool guy. Like I remember we called him one time to ask him about being in the commercial, and my executive director called him, and we couldn't get in touch with him for a few days. He calls us back. He's like, "I'm so sorry. I was in Tibet with the Dalai Lama, like just doing this big
Just
thing."
casually hanging.
Yeah, he's just hanging, and like lo and behold, like he friends us on Facebook, and it's like a picture of him with the Dalai Lama, like just literally hanging out because he does all these big commission Buddhist artworks over in um, all over Asia, basically, and he's such a like humble and chill guy, but he's done some incredible stuff. And anyway, so that whole thing led to like everything snowballing. We're like, hey, we want you to come in before the exhibit, film this commercial. So yeah, we just kind of mapped it out, and we just had these ideas of like the opening scene with like the battleship, and the kind of darkness comes over it, like that's the like ominous, cinematic type thing, and that's what we really wanted to do, and that's when we worked with craft shows. We wanted that cinematic aspect to it, to really hype things
Hmm.
up instead of just being like, here's an exhibit, here's Genghis Khan, here's the stuff that's in it. We want some mystery to it, like you sit there and show all your cards, aka show all the artifacts, you know what reason do people have to come see it, versus
Yeah.
little bait them with this cool commercial, and then come see it for yourself, like see what the hype's about. And it worked out. Our numbers were phenomenal. Like I said, we won several awards, and they actually craft show got a ton of work out of that too. As far because they won, winning all those awards, that got them a high profile with a lot of other clients. So yeah, it was mutually beneficial, great working relationship with them. So it was a great time. I actually had pneumonia the entire time we were shooting the commercial, and I didn't know it. So I ended up in the hospital the next week
Ugh.
for about like 3 weeks. And was sitting there on my laptop, doing my breathing treatments and medications and stuff, and like, finishing up the marketing plan for the exhibit for it to open on time. So yeah, it was wild.
That sounds like one hell of a week to
It
to go
was. I was
from.
like, yeah, I think we wrapped up shooting the final night at about 4:30 in the morning. We had to shoot on a Sunday evening to kind of bypass a lot of the downtown crowd, like, Friday and Saturday. And, we would
Hmm.
still want some people out. So we're like, Sunday's the best bet because we had to get police to block off the streets, all the permits because we had a drone. Of course, we got a guy riding a horse with a flaming torch in his hand, too. So we had to go through
Yeah.
all the rigmarole, getting all the clearances to do that safely. So it's a huge thing. And yeah, we wrapped up and passed out as soon as I got home and woke up about 2 days later. I was like, I think I need to go to the doctor. And the doctor's like, you need to go to the ER. So yeah, it was wild, but it was worth it. I fared okay, and commercial turned out great. So yeah,
Yeah.
and it,
Well, what we do for the things we love, right?
Yeah.
It's
exactly,
now,
absolutely,
you had an amazing experience also, with you mentioned the Cuban exhibit that you guys brought in, and having you as an amazing friend because we met on the convention circuit.
so
I
here,
was
see if I can grab it real quick. Just run
yeah.
this little guy.
There you go. Look at that.
Still hanging.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I still have all that stuff from that. That was a great time. I'm glad we met. We still have this connection going. Yeah. Anyway,
Oh
sorry to be.
yeah, no, absolutely, no, 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 absolutely. And one thing that because we have family actually, Juju's half Cuban, and we were
Surprising.
able to kind of see, yeah, there you go. We were able to see that you were able to take this trip there,
Yes.
to kind of, you know, and most people don't realize that when you're putting together these exhibits, a big part of it is getting that experience. Like you said, you go to these
Yeah.
conventions where they're kind of showing you this, but this is like a firsthand look at another
Yeah.
country that you're kind of peeking behind, kind of like something that was a lot of taboo for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Um, so, and I know you being a car lover, it
Yeah.
was because there's a lot of ingenuity in Cuba. A lot of people don't realize that because of the embargo and everything that they had on there, they have to kind of build things with their own ingenuity and kind of make things work. So how was that trip for you?
That was a life changing experience. Like honestly, like Cuba had been on my bucket list since I was a kid because I remember my grandfather telling me about, because he was a mechanic. I guess I should preface with that. So I grew up around cars, and he would tell me stories that he'd read. And I remember him giving me a National Geographic one time that had an article about Cuba. It showed all the old cars and talked a little bit, mostly about politics, but it talked about what they had to do to keep those things going and things like that. And I just always thought that was such an admirable and cool thing to do. And um, getting to go there, man, it was humbling for one, just seeing like how amazing people were with having so
Mhm.
little, and being just kind of forgotten about, for lack of better words, by the rest of the
Hmm.
world for the most part because of the
Yeah.
embargo and things like that. And it was, I don't know, it was very emotional, and it was also like very inspiring at the same time. It made me appreciate a lot of what I have that I wasn't very good at appreciating before, but also made me appreciate the Cuban people as a whole and how incredible they've been. And they were so welcoming to us, and just the most hospitable and beautiful human beings I ever run across. And that was the first time I'd ever traveled outside the country too. So it was a
Mm.
double whammy for me. But uh, we got, without delving into the politics too much, like anytime Americans visit there, because if you're Canadian or elsewhere, you don't have those same issues.
Hmm.
But as an American going there, they kind of curate your experience a little bit, for lack of better words. So you're not necessarily supposed to see some of the more negative things like the poverty, but it's
Yeah,
inescapable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way not to see it. But you're
yeah.
sheltered, I guess, a little bit from it. But um, because we were venturing off shooting this commercial, we saw a lot more of that. We got to interact with people who weren't necessarily on the guided tours and stuff like that because we're getting our own
Mm.
footage and things like that. So it was just incredible. Like I'm still processing it several years later, just because it was such a whirlwind of a trip because we had so much to do and so much to cover in such a short amount of time. Um, it was just it was wild. Like, but yeah, like the ingenuity of the people. Like I remember we left dinner one night. We rode in like it was a '56 Bel Air, but it had a diesel engine in it because they didn't like the American engine finally crapped out in it, and so they just took a Russian diesel engine out of like a truck or something
Hmm.
and retrofitted it into a 50 something Bel Air. It was like because when we cranked it up, I was like, this sounds weird, and I was like, it's insane. So
Yeah.
they just came up with ways to do it. And I remember talking to some guys one morning. I got up before the rest of the group and was sitting outside the hotel, and all the classic cars were lined up there, and the guys were kind of shooting the breeze with each other. And one guy was working on his car, so I went down there, and my Spanish is like this at best. I used to be pretty decent at it, but anyhow, like I start kind of chit chatting with the guys because he spoke more English and could connect with me better with my crappy broken Spanish. But we started talking about cars, and he was like, he popped the hood on his, and he had like a Volkswagen something diesel engine, and his like Ford or Pontiac, I think, is 1950s car. They're all classic cars. I was just like blown away just looking at all the stuff he did to like make these parts. And he said he had pieces from like Volkswagens and Nissans and like Datsuns and all these different cars just to make this engine fit in there. And he hadn't made it up with the original American transmission somehow, which I'm still baffled about. And it was just insane. And they were so stoked to talk about their cars too. I mean, that's their pride and joy. If you've got one of those cars, you're using it as a taxi or a tourist thing. It's your livelihood, but it's also a source of pride too, because there's so many
Yeah.
people there with nothing down there. So it
And
was
I
it
think
was
a lot of people fail to see that. I think it's kind of like the whole, don't judge a book by its cover. And
absolutely
I think, that's sometimes really important, especially when you're trying to like, curate a museum, is
yeah,
that, yeah, you have a bunch of artifacts but it's the inner workings of what this exhibit tells somebody when they walk in through a room, the emotional experience that they have, the connection that they'll have to this object that separates it from just being something behind glass to something
yeah,
that's going to leave a resonating experience with you.
exactly.
Which is like what's
Yeah,
so cool about that. So, um, but yeah, no, and I had the pleasure of going with my wife. We took a trip just to go ahead and you were unfortunately you were not there. I think you were at a convention at the
yeah. I
time.
was in Charlotte.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, when we went to go see it, because not only is it her heritage, but it was a really cool look at everything from how they do screen printing still,
yeah.
their music, basically their culture, and then aspects of, like you said, the science part about it, their ecosphere that they have, because a lot of people really don't understand. They see it as an island, but there's so much more to that island than
Oh my god,
just,
it's
you
incredible.
know yeah, it really is. Um, so let me ask you this. I'm really curious because one of the things that I look forward to is around Halloween time for you.
Yeah.
You guys go ahead and put together some really cool exhibits the last couple of years, and they've all been based on kind of like either fears or things like. How do you come up with that? Because
Hmm.
obviously it's themed,
Yeah.
right? Because it's Halloween. But where do you come up with these ideas?
So that's kind of the brainchild of me and our executive director Don Como because we're both like everybody messes with me because I'm kind of a Scrooge around Christmas because I'm just not a big Christmas person. I'm a Halloween person,
Yeah.
and I loves like horror movies and he used to do like he's got a background in like forensics and stuff like that. But he also like for our Halloween events used to do like scar makeup and all the little like special effects stuff. So we were sitting around one day years ago and like you know budget comes into play and we need to fill these galleries with exhibits and whatnot and we were trying to figure out. We'd always wanted to do exhibits ourselves, like create something from scratch and have it, in case we need to fill time or space or whatever. We're like, let's do something. Like we always want to do a haunted house too, but we're like, there's no science to it. But then we kind of started brainstorming on it more and coming back to the idea. And like, what if we do it on phobias? Like, there's plenty of science behind that. There's, you know, folklore. There's urban myths, and there's legit science and all that kind of stuff that tie in with phobias. So we based the first round off that, and we just started digging in and researching. And that's the other fun part of this job, is like learning so much. It's like going to school without the boring part that's super structured and like, makes you want to follow. It's, you get to do fun stuff and you get to enjoy what you're doing. So yeah, it was mainly he and I at first, and some of our other staff jumping in here and there. And like, we went through and researched all the phobias, came up with the verbiage. I designed all the signage and things like that. And then we started designing exhibit pieces and things like that, which also led to us getting on like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace to find products and like other stuff that we couldn't build or whatever. So we ended up at some guy's house in New Orleans one time that just had like mountains of like hot rod stuff and like Halloween props and things like that. We got an old like 1930s dentist chair and all this different stuff from there that looks like it's out of like a Saw movie or something. And then we end up at some lady's house over in I think it was Milton, Florida, maybe. She used to have a haunted house on her property, and she was closing it down. It was basically just this big, cattle barn that was retrofitted to be a haunted house. And we found her on Craigslist. We went out there and like walked through her whole haunted house that was shut down, and just got all kind of artifacts from her. It turned into this whole like little scavenger hunt. But yeah, it was just like kind of a labor of love for us to do. Basically, have an excuse to have a haunted house, to have some science. It's kind of the gist
the
of
whole
that
STEM component in it. Yeah.
Yeah, but over the years it's grown. Like I think you probably saw the pictures when we made Mothman. I think a year or two ago. We started off part of a Batman costume and a mannequin and this mask, and then like pieced about 20 different things together and make our own Mothman. Um,
That's cool.
and then we created like we did the clown room, and I like designed and sketched out the giant clown entrance. It was like the head, and you walk through his mouth,
Yes.
kind of. And that's of course inspired by like classic horror movies and kind of the cliche Rob Zombie, like he plays into the whole circus sideshow kind of stuff. It was kind of inspired by some of the things like that. So, but yeah, those are some of the most fun ones to work on. Because one, we're getting to do something we genuinely are into and have a pre-existing interest in. We're also getting to do it ourselves. It's not like we're just paying for an exhibit, bringing it in, setting it up, and letting it run.
Yeah.
It's like it's ever evolving, and we're making it come to fruition. So it's a lot of fun.
And then it must be fun to go ahead and kind of get rid of all those mannequins too. I remember seeing your,
Yeah.
hey guys, anybody need mannequins? Because you did
Yeah.
have, yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah. We ended up. I found this guy on Craigslist, and Don and I rent a U-Haul. We drove to Tallahassee, and we got there, and it was this like World War II, World War One, like museum or kind of museum costume supply company, and they had literally like 200 mannequins or something like that. And they're like, it's basically like you buy them all or not at all type thing. So we're like, we'll take them all. We'll figure out what to do with them, because we only needed like a couple dozen. But the price was so good, even between the rental truck and everything else, is like, well, let's just get them all. We didn't realize quite how many were there until we got there. And it took us probably 20 trips up and down these stairs to get all these mannequins and bits and pieces of mannequins. But yeah, it was wild. I was like, felt like some kind of used car salesman just hawking all these things on Facebook all the time. Like, please come buy these mannequins. Like, we have too many. And I hate throwing things away. So I end up like taking stuff home and making art projects with it, taking them to friends and things like that. But I mean, we got to make the most of our dollar too. Again, being a nonprofit. So it was, yeah, it was. It's always weird requests for me on Facebook. Like, hey, do you guys have any kind of skeletons or like taxidermy? whatever, just random stuff, and people are like, what is up with him? Like,
You're that one weird friend that's like always like, what is he doing? It's like
when-
he was always such a quiet guy.
yeah, definitely makes for good conversation, especially people who don't personally know me that are
Yeah.
just like only Facebook friends and don't really know what I do. I'm sure they're like, what the hell is he up to? Like, what is up with this stuff? But
Yeah.
it's definitely a fun thing to just to work on that stuff and get because usually I'm in my office. I've got 3 different computer screens up here right now plus the plotter, so I'm usually like at my little workstation. So when I actually get to go work on stuff hands on, that's one of my favorite things to still do.
And let me ask you, what's coming up next? So, like, what's next for the museum? I mean, you said you kind of working on a couple, big ideas.
Yeah.
What's next in store?
So right now, like I said, I think I mentioned we have illusions exhibit, like illusions, like optical illusions, auditory, all that stuff. That's another exhibit we created ourselves as well. So that's going right now through the end of July, and then I think we've got Tiny Titans. I'm trying to make sure I got that right. Yes, because we've got a film called Tiny Giants, then we've got Tiny Titans that's coming. So you get a little tongue tied with some of these things here and there, but yeah, like we've got Illusions right now, Tiny Titans, and we've got Galileo coming, which is about Galileo Galilei, astronomer, and that's coming from Australia through Artisans of Florence. We've worked with them before doing the Archimedes and Da Vinci exhibits as well. And then we're working on a deal to bring back Animation Academy, Toytopia, and Popnology. We're trying to work with the companies now to work out a package deal. Without getting too much into detail on that, like that's a fingers crossed thing for me because that's like a 1, 2, 3 punch, like awesome exhibits. Like you gotta come check them all out. They're so cool. And it's such an easy sell too because it's so much nostalgia. Like Toytopia has an arcade in it. Animation Academy, of course, has all the interactives and um, like the just history of animation, basically. And then Popnology has everything from like Back to the Future stuff to like the Terminator. Was it T1000? Or is that
Mhm.
the
The T800 or is the liquid metal guy? Is the liquid
yeah?
metal guy is the T1000.
Gotcha. Okay,
The
Yeah.
I got mixed up. But yeah, it's got basically like life size replicas of those, like that are movie quality in the exhibit. So
Wow.
Oh
we're
wow,
hoping.
that's cool.
Um, And then beyond that, we're looking. We've got a big renovation coming up. We're going to clear out one of our permanent galleries, renovate it, and then move our permanent gallery upstairs and make our downstairs gallery a traveling gallery to make it. It's basically how it was originally done years ago before they installed that exhibit. It just makes it easier for us to load the exhibits in and out instead of like coming in through the loading dock, going upstairs, or
There's
going up,
yeah.
lifting stuff over. So we've got a huge grant to redo that gallery. That's going to cost us almost $1 million to redo that. So that
Wow.
was a huge deal for us. With us being a nonprofit, to get that kind of funding for anything is out of this world. So we've got a lot of big stuff in the works, and we're going to Aztec conference in September to start scoping out new exhibits and things like that. So yeah, there's always something, and we're constantly like updating our permanent galleries as well. So we just got off a phone call yesterday. I don't know if you're familiar with like a Newton's cradle, like the little balls that like you drop
Mhm.
one. There's a company out of Texas that has a giant one. It's probably 10 feet long,
Wow.
and the balls are probably 2 feet in diameter. We're working on getting that to put in one of our galleries too as a permanent piece. So yeah, and we found
Oh,
them
that's
through
cool.
TikTok, or they found us through our TikTok page. So we end up connecting with them, who in and talk to us about some bigger projects we want to work on too. So that's another way some of that stuff happens. Is just social media. You just run across somebody and it's like, hey, this is cool. Like, let's reach out to them. So, but
So
yeah,
were you the one responsible for the whole getting your slightly older staff to do the what do you call it, the new terminology, the whole
yeah,
flayed? Yeah, that.
That's Taylor. She started off at our box office, and she's got a background, or she went to school for hospitality, so that's why she ended up here in the first place. And then she kind of helped out with a few projects. I was like, she's really good at this, and also I don't have the time to manage all this stuff. So talked to Don, our executive director. I was like, hey, can we bring her upstairs and steal her from the box office and get her into marketing? And I just she came up with some ideas. I was like, you know what? Run with it. Just have fun. This is your, because she's in her mid-20s, I think. And
Yeah.
that's the demographic 100% for TikTok, especially. I mean, everybody's on there, but be creative like that, get on the viral stuff. She's, once in a while, I'll pitch an idea to her, but typically she's like, I want to do this, this, and this. I'm like, go for it. Excuse me, one second.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's phenomenal. She cracks me up every day. She comes in here and she's like, I want to do this, 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 and so much energy. I'm like, I trust you. Go for it. So she does a great job of that. She gets all the credit and then some for that.
And I mean, it makes your job easier, right? Because she's
frees me up to do some more kind of long-term stuff. And
yeah.
I'm 42 now, so I'm not exactly cutting edge when it comes to that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I had to Google what Discord was. So no worries. I completely understand. Now, one thing that I want to do is we always have this really kind of fun little game that we do with all of our guests, right? We call it the who the how, right? So the who is you, and the how is something that's hopefully going to be somewhat in your wheelhouse, something that you may or may not know what. So there's really no right answers or wrong answers. Actually, well, that's what I was meaning to say. There is no right answer to the wrong answer as long as you get it right.
Okay,
is that clear?
Like that.
Okay, now no, but either way, it's just a fun way to kind of educate our listeners on something that's really cool, something that you may have experienced. And we're actually going to talk about Cuba today. So basically, these are just some simple questions. If you know them, you do. If not, just it could be a swinger or a miss. Now everything is built on the point system. It's like an honor system here. So we promise that we'll give you a point if you get it right. But you can't take us at our word. So are you ready to play the who the how?
Let's go for it, man.
All right, fantastic. All right, so Cuba actually has a really good education system.
Yes.
It actually has one of the highest literacy rates in the world. Do you know how high their literacy rate is?
Oh man, I want to say either 94, 97%, something like that. It's pretty high up there, I think.
It is 99.7%. I will give it to you. That is super close.
Insane, because I remember that was a big talking point during the exhibit in terms of the American education system. We're nowhere near that, But yeah, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, fantastic. And that's a lot of pride that they have there, as well is their education system. Now, one thing that they have, even though they have the highest literacy rate in the world, they also have the smallest bird in the world. Do you know what their smallest bird in the world that is from Cuba is called?
Oh man, I can picture it in my head, but I'm spacing out on the name, and I feel awful about it.
Don't worry, I'll only take slight offense to it. Slight.
I can't think of the name. I'm spacing out on that one.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll go ahead and give it to you. It's the Cuban bee hummingbird. It's the bee hummingbird. So close.
It was I had it in my head. I'm like I thought hummingbird, but I was doubting myself. Anyway.
Yeah, I'll
take the L.
Yeah, it's a Cuban bee hummingbird, not to be confused with a Puerto Rican bee hummingbird. Similar flags. No, I'm just kidding. It is that one. So now you mentioned the whole thing about their salary, right? Poverty. It's one thing that they do try to hide very well from the tourists and things like that. It is something that is a known fact. It's one of those things that it's like, well, just look at what the illusionist is doing over here. Don't pay attention to this hand here. But do you know how much the average Cuban salary is per month?
So per month, like I'm trying to remember what our tour guide and some of the people we talked to. I mean, it's like in U.S. dollars. I know it's less than like $20 even. Like, or I'm pretty sure it's in that ballpark. Like, it's. I know what we tipped them as a group was more than most
Mhm.
of them made here. I'm gonna say like monthly. You said
Monthly.
probably like maybe $10, something like
That
that.
is correct. That
Okay,
is correct.
I knew it's somewhere.
The average Cuban salary is about $10 a month. So they rely heavily on the tourist dollar, which is
Yeah.
why, they cater to tourists the way that they do.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, oh yeah, and you could see it through there. Like I said, it's one of those things where there's so many layers to Cuba.
Yeah.
They are definitely the onion of the Caribbean or Caribbean
Yeah.
or Caribe. Uh, depending on what you want to do. Now, one thing that you mentioned here earlier also, what is the most popular sport in Cuba? But like a large percentage of this population, regardless whether they are fit or not, will play this sport.
I'm gonna go with baseball.
Absolutely, 100% correct. It is baseball. Yeah,
So,
I don't. Go ahead.
fun fact, that's technically while we went to Cuba was they were doing a plaque dedication in one of the squares because baseball got to Cuba via Mobile, Alabama through Spring Hill College. Like a few Cuban students came over, they learned how to play baseball at Spring Hill College in Mobile and went back home and took, baseball bats and baseballs with them. They started playing, baseball in Cuba, and so we did a plaque dedication. There's a matching one in Mobile and a matching one in Havana. So yeah, I was hoping I didn't screw that up because I know a lot of people play soccer down there as well. I was like, I know baseball. I think they've got 7 or 8 different teams,
Mhm.
like kind of national teams, for lack of better words.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, random side
No, no,
quest
no.
there.
No, it's
That's
fine.
absolutely right. And if you talk to the majority of Cuban people, they are like what they call armchair coaches, where they will go ahead and tell you what everybody is doing wrong, while kicking back a nice beer, a nice cold drink, because they haven't ran a plate since they were like about 12.
Yeah,
So, and I can see that I'm part Cuban, sense, right? Because my wife, since she's Cuban, even though I'm from Chilean descent, right, from South America, pretty much it absorbs my Chilean and cancels it out, and I'm suddenly I am Cuban.
yeah.
So yeah. Now, one thing that I want to go ahead and kind of leave everybody with, is just like as kind of like an afterthought, something that maybe you could share with us. Um, for those people that are kind of struggling, right, to try to find what their passion is, especially someone who's really creative, right, who had the same start that you did. What kind of advice would you give them to go ahead and kind of help push forward? I mean, you said one was like, okay, well, yeah, you can make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Things can happen that'll lead in your path. But if you were visiting a, previous version of yourself,
Yeah.
where you could kind of just be like, hey, I'm going to give you this one piece of advice, what would that be?
Um, the biggest thing I think, like, is give yourself grace for one when you do make those mistakes. Like I said with the first job, don't beat yourself up too much about it. Learn from it, move on. Don't linger on it. Your mistakes are meant to learn from. Like if you dwell on them and like you keep stumbling over the same thing, you're never going to go forward. So I would say that's a big kind of a life advice thing too. But career wise, surround yourself with creative people. Like if are like-minded people that, and not to say you isolate yourself, because isolationism, as we know, is very problematic. But to be around like-minded but also open-minded people, I think is key to the success in anything, because you're going to learn from them and they're going to learn from you, and it's a cyclical, mutually beneficial relationship that you develop with people like that. And the more you surround yourself with that, the more you're going to grow. You're going to progress in the direction that you want to, and that's what helped me with marketing and design and the arts, is being around people in those fields, but had the same mindset that I did. They were open to growing. They weren't just like, it's my way or the highway. You can only do it this way. There's only A to B. So you can go A, C, L, Z, W, A, B, and then, to Z, whatever.
Unless you're pulled over. Yeah, you definitely, yeah.
But no, yeah, there's no set path. It's you got to find your own way. But the more you surround yourself with good people, like you guys are well aware of it. You have a great community with what you guys do, and it shows. Like your passion shows through it, and I think that's important. Is just keep interacting with those people. Don't close yourself off.
Right.
Be open to things. You're vulnerable, sure, but the growth you get out of it is worth it. So I guess that's career and life philosophical in a nutshell kind of thing. Because that's one thing I did struggle with when I was younger, was being closed off and like kind of afraid to take chances and didn't know how to like get out of my shell and kind of network with people, for lack of better words, and it's that's kind of the best way I can describe that. To do that and to find your passion is to just be around people with similar ideas and goals.
Absolutely. So it's almost like be that amazing Ford Fairlane or that old Chevrolet, where you build your parts and you build yourself out of other, hodgepodges of things. As long as you're running and you're there and keep chugging forward.
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, Josh, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Oh no, we appreciate you, and as always, we're going to go ahead and link your social media down below, so that way you guys could go ahead and give the Exploreum an absolute tour of just their amazing little. It's not a child's museum, okay, all right, and if anything, yeah, there's something for everyone there.
Yes.
Plus, on the weekends, I know that you guys do really cool like live science exhibits there in the courtyard. Really amazing stuff. So give them, check them out. They're a wonderful attraction located in downtown Mobile. And any other last words?
No, man, I just want to thank you guys for having me on and just being so gracious and, awesome as host, to just, give us some time and,
Well, thank you for your for letting us pick your mind, because it's really was it's always so cool.
Come in town next time, I'll make it a point not to be out of town next time he comes. So.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like you're dodging me, man. What's up with that? Now,
I'm looking forward to giving you guys a behind the scenes tour when you're in town next time. So, and hopefully it'll be when we got maybe Toytopia or something. So, yeah,
that'd
be really cool. So, guys, check that out. As always, I am Deadpool Speaks, and with me was the magnificent Bad Juju. But most of all, thank you so much for listening to Chimichanga Talk. Remember to like and subscribe and do all those other doodads and hickety-doos and things like that to go ahead and keep the algorithm flowing, however that works. No one understands, do whatever you need to do to go ahead and make that juju flow. But most importantly, Josh, thank you so much for being on. You've been listening to Chimichanga Talk, and we're out. See ya.
Thank you for listening this week, and remember, just like always, we will be back next week with another great guest and more adventures from the land of Chimichanga Talk. So tune in next time, same Deadpool time, same Deadpool channel.